everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Erik, checking in from Austin, Texas. AJ is not, unfortunately, going to be with me today. He's taking a little time off. He's still in Medellin, Colombia. But today I've got a great show for you. I've got an interview at the end with Eli David, who is the founder of Become Nomad. We have a pretty awesome conversation about tips and tools that make it easier to plan traveling and working on the road. Eli is a master of this. He changes location all the time, every couple of months, and has really built out a great system and also some very cool resources. So if that's something that's important to you, I think the interview will be very valuable. I've also got a trip report. I want to share some information about what I learned on my trip back to Brazil. Learned a couple of really valuable things about Singapore Airlines frequent flyer program, KrisFlyer, and the rules around Star Alliance award bookings, and also have some news and updates for you guys from around the points and miles world, and the answer to a listener question about booking travel from Buenos Aires, Argentina to Florianopolis, Brazil, which I thought was worth sharing. It's probably not a route that a ton of folks are on, but I think the concept is important because it brings to light how important the transfer relationships are with the transferable currencies and also the different types of airline partners that can be booked with each program. So hopefully it's helpful, if not directly for anyone flying from Buenos Aires to Brazil, but maybe can shed some light on some other opportunities that you might be missing. All right, so show notes for today's episode are at abroaders.com/152, and let's get into it. So first thing I want to mention, a couple of weeks ago, I shared that I did a little bit of a black hat or gray hat type award redemption. And I wanted to make one really important point, at least to me, about the ethics of this and just sort of explain where I was coming from when I decided to give this a try. So number one, we get a lot of questions about this type of stuff. Some of the folks out there are pretty advanced and are looking at opportunities, just different ways to really stretch points and miles. So I want to say from a personal perspective, this is not something that I plan on doing on an ongoing basis. I like more or less generally just sort of following the pricing and trying to stay within the rules as much as possible. This is definitely not illegal, but it's something that the airlines don't appreciate, and I want to keep a good relationship. So if you do try this, try it at your own risk. I'm going to share a bunch of reasons how it works. And the other thing is just sort of for my own ethical purpose, I booked an additional ticket and sort of spent some extra miles with Singapore. Maybe not something I had to do, but on a separate basis, I basically threw away an existing ticket. Didn't travel and spend some miles on a round trip and decided to just take a one-way and then book a return. So, really interested in hearing feedback, what you guys think about this segment, whether you'd like to hear more. But because we get so many questions about how to actually do these sorts of things and whether you can get away with doing them, I thought it was actually worth trying it myself, and I almost shipped my bag to Peru by accident. So this is definitely not for beginners, and you're going to have to make your own judgment call about whether you feel comfortable paying a price in terms of the amount of miles required that's less than what the airline would charge you normally for the destination you go to. So I'll leave that up to you guys, but I wanted to at least add that disclaimer about how and why. And we certainly do not encourage folks to use these tactics to pay less for awards, but it's up to you. And I think information is power, and the more of it you have, the better you can make good decisions. So here's my trip report. So first of all, pretty solid itinerary. I was super happy with the experience with Avianca Brazil. I flew from Salvador to Rio de Janeiro and connected in Rio for a direct flight to Houston. Now, as I mentioned last week, my actual itinerary was from Salvador to Lima, Peru, which with Singapore Airlines, they use a zone-based chart for Star Alliance. So that effectively meant that my itinerary was within South America, and I paid the South America to South America price. Now, that's definitely a little bit gray hat. That's certainly not the intention of those zone-based programs, but because there's so few flights that go direct within South America, it's actually relatively easy and understandable to book a connection in the US on the way to a different place in South America. So I decided to try this out and just see if it was possible to make this itinerary work. I know a lot of people out there try and sort of use this. This is sort of similar to the idea behind Skiplagged, which is a site that helps you search for hidden city ticketing opportunities, which basically means that let's say you want to fly from New York to Chicago. Those are two pretty big markets. And so New York to Chicago can often be a lot more expensive just because of the demand for that particular flight. And if you book a flight from New York to, let's say, Kansas City, Missouri through Chicago, it can be much cheaper and you may be able to just get off in Chicago. Airlines don't love this, but I wanted to see how this would work, and I can report back that it did go well, with the exception that I almost sent my bags to Lima. And so this is something you definitely want to be very careful about if you ever decide to book a ticket like this one. Number one, it has to be a one-way flight, or it has to be the return part of your round-trip itinerary, because everything after the flight that you miss gets canceled. And in my past experience, I'd done lots of trips where I flew from Brazil or someplace else to the United States, and you always have to get your bags when you arrive in the US. And so, almost always the international gateway, there's not many international flights from places I travel, at least, to Detroit. So often I'll be stopping in another hub city and then taking a domestic flight onward. And so I thought that you always have to get your bags when you enter the United States, even if you're not staying in the United States. Well, it turns out that if you're connecting to another country, you don't have to get your bags. And so I almost sent my bags to Lima because I didn't think about talking with the gate agent when I checked in Salvador, Brazil, and let her know that I needed to get my checked bag in Houston. So it worked out okay. She had to actually go chase my bag down that conveyor belt that takes it into the back room area of the airport, was able to get things sorted out so that the bag got offloaded in Houston. And then I was able to head over to the other Houston airport and catch a Southwest flight for about 5,000 miles to get to Austin. So everything went pretty well. I had kind of an interesting experience with Uber as well. I'll get to that in a second, though. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this particular itinerary was brought to my attention that Singapore actually has some super flexible change policies with respect to last minute tickets. And so the reason I found out is I was taking a look at options to see if I could actually do this flight in business class. And so I was thinking that I wanted to just check, and I looked at the United flight that I was on. Now, United's business class is not awesome, but because they're rolling out Polaris, I was pretty curious. And so while I was at the airport, I decided to call Singapore and see if it would be possible to upgrade my flight, since there were a bunch of business class seats available with points on my United flight. And the Singapore rep was super helpful. And the only reason I actually wasn't able to do this, I think, is because I had already checked in. So I had already checked my bags and checked in. And he basically said that by changing my itinerary, I was very likely to lose the rest of my flights. So I didn't want to take the risk of getting stranded in Rio de Janeiro and not being able to continue my trip to Houston. Ended up not making any changes. But worth knowing that the 24-hour minimum time rule to change your flight. That's what he said to me. He said there's a rule with Singapore Airlines award tickets that if you want to change a Star Alliance award, you need to do it at least 24 hours before departure. But I basically found out that is something that you can bend a little bit. So if you're in a situation, it's worth giving them a call. But the absolute deadline for sure is when you check in for your flight. They can't do anything about it. So that was point number one. You may be able to duck under that 24-hour rule. And usually you can manage to call 24 hours before your flight. And if I had done that, I would have been able to upgrade to business class and probably would have paid about 25,000 points on Singapore to fly business class back to the US, i.e. fly to Lima. The rest of the travel itinerary went pretty well. For those of you that do connect in Brazil, there is a really good lounge at Galeão Airport, the GIG. Usually, Brazilian lounges are pretty awful, both at Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. The airport lounge that you have access to with Priority Pass is pretty crappy. The Centurion Lounge at Guarulhos Airport in Sao Paulo is pretty horrible. And so this was a really awesome breath of fresh air. The lounge is the Premium Plaza Lounge, which is actually just down the hall from the American Airlines Lounge and the Gol Lounge in the International Terminal. But I was super impressed with the quality. I mean, the food was really good. The only real complaint I have, the booze was not self-serve and kind of the cheapest, crappiest version of every type of alcohol. But other than that, really above standard and pretty spacious, and really nice showers as well. So if you're connecting in Rio, that's a nice little upgrade if you have the Priority Pass, which again is offered with the Citi Prestige card, Amex Platinum card, and the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, amongst probably a few others as well. So I thought I'd drop that. Also got to check out the Amex Centurion Lounge in Houston, which was super nice. Staff was awesome. Decent food, although I was actually a little disappointed. They're kind of known for having some above bar kind of food, just really high quality. And that's been my experience at the Amex Lounge in Dallas, and also when AJ and I stopped at the one at LaGuardia. But I thought the Houston one was kind of crappy, so be aware of that. You might end up actually wanting to buy some food somewhere else in the airport if you're stopping in Houston. Maybe it was just breakfast and I'm wrong. I'd love to hear feedback if anybody else has had better experiences on that front. Other thing I wanted to point out as a quick tip is make sure you use Lounge Buddy, or the Priority Pass program has an app as well. I think Lounge Buddy is quite a bit cooler, and they've improved their system quite a bit. It now syncs with TripIt. So if you've got your travel plans stored on TripIt, Lounge Buddy will import them automatically, which is a new feature. Thought that was super cool. So basically I was able to, I don't actually add anything to TripIt. So TripIt looks at your email. They find the itinerary that you have. Lounge Buddy will import those trips for you. And so I was able to, just with one click, get all the airports that I was going to be visiting. And Lounge Buddy's got really good information about the lounge, both where the lounge is, although they don't have a map to find it. They've got across from gate D7 or whatever. And they've also got ratings and photos. So if you want to check out, which lounge is going to be better, that could be probably the better option. Priority Pass also gives you the basics and tells you which lounge you have access to. So you can download that app as well. Last thing from my travel experience, I wanted to mention one other thing that I learned about Singapore and their Chris Flyer program, and that is that I actually ended up losing my earlier trip that I had. So I booked something from Colombia to Brazil and then booked my way back to Colombia on the 28th of November. And I lost that itinerary, the return part of it. I was hoping that I could recredit the miles. And the mistake that I made was that I booked a round trip. And I knew that there was a good chance I was going to come back later on, sometime in December, or even potentially come back to the United States, as I ended up doing. And so I wanted to point this out because this is not just Singapore. There's a lot of programs like this, where if you book a round trip ticket and you take the first flight, so in other words, the outbound, which I took on the 20th of November, the return flights are now sort of locked in or have more restrictive rules about what you can change and how. And so Singapore's got really generous change fees to the tune of $30. You can change your flight, and it's even less for some types of changes. Like if you don't change the destination, you just change the dates or whatever. So it's really reasonable, and I could have avoided all of this pain, since when I booked the ticket originally at the beginning of November, I knew that I might be changing that return date. I might not be going back to Colombia. So had I just had them make two separate award reservations, this would not have been a problem. Because I booked a single round trip on one record locator when I flew to Brazil and then tried to change the return part of a round trip ticket. It wasn't possible to do. So I ended up losing 12,500 miles or so, which I got back with my Blackhat little tactic, faking my flight to Lima. So I feel ethically okay about that, since I got out of, ended up, they got the same number of points anyways out of my account. But something to be aware of. If you think you're going to make some changes, it's definitely worth considering booking 2 separate reservations. Worst case scenario, you pay a little bit extra in terms of change fees, because you're going to, if you need to change the outbound and the return, if you book it as a round trip, it would only cost $30 to change. If you book it as 2 different one ways, it could cost $60 if you need to change both. But in my opinion, that's a really reasonable trade-off. If you think there's likelihood that you're just going to change one part of it, it'd be the same price. And at the very least, if you need to change the return portion after you've taken the outbound portion, you're going to be in good shape. You can do so, unlike me. So anyways, that's the end of my trip report. And I wanted to share another tip that came in thanks to a question from Joe. Joe was looking at flying back on a one-way flight from Buenos Aires to Florianopolis, and he was asking about which programs might work. He has United points, had checked that, and had also looked at British Airways, trying to use their partner LAN, which is one of the big ones in Latin America, and hadn't been able to find any solutions. And so just goes to show that it really does pay off to know all the different partnerships, because it turns out that Joe was able to go from Buenos Aires to Florianopolis, Brazil on a direct flight with Gol Airlines, which is one of Brazil's carriers. Gol is partners with Air France and with Delta, and also with Etihad. And so because Joe had Chase Ultimate Rewards points, he was able to transfer those to Air France and book a 12,500 mile one-way flight. It's a direct flight, which is super cool, because Florianopolis is kind of a small airport. It can be a little bit harder to get to. And so that worked out really, really well, and a pretty excellent deal for an international flight. I think paid tickets Joe had looked at were about $500. So this was some significant savings, and taxes and fees are generally pretty low on those. So take a look. I'm going to link in the show notes our master resource on airline partners as well, because that will help you figure out if you know which airlines operate direct flights. It makes it a little bit easier. You can see which programs can book those and which transferable currencies will transfer to them, which is how we ended up solving the problem with Joe. So anyways, that'll cover it for that part of the show. Let's dive into some news and updates before we get to our interview. Okay, so not a ton of action this week, but there are a few little opportunities that I wanted to point out that may be useful to some of you guys. One thing to just kind of be aware of generally is that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there are a ton of shopping portal type bonuses. So generally speaking, we're going to just gloss over these guys, mention the ones that seem like they really could apply to lots of people, but just be aware there's a lot of opportunities like this. So when you're Christmas shopping, if you do a bunch of your shopping online, there can be big opportunities to sort of double dip and get extra points by clicking through one of these shopping portals. So the first one up is for Delta Sky Miles. You can get up to 1,500 bonus Sky Miles for shopping when you use the Delta Sky Miles shopping portal. And so you get 500 when you spend extra miles. When you spend $500, you get an extra 1,500 if you spend $750. And the deadline is December 9th. So you've only got a couple of days. Today, Wednesday, is the 7th, which, note to self, say happy birthday to mom. Happy birthday if you're listening, mom. Not a great deal, but if you've got stuff that you're going to buy anyways, by all means, go for it. It's just an extra click. So basically you just go to the Delta shopping portal and say you wanted to buy something from Nike or whatever. They might have a link to Nike where you get some extra miles. You click through and you get credit with Delta. The other thing to be aware of with all of these shopping portal type things is my favorite place to look is called Every Reward. It's EVR. So just cut that, Kate, run that back. And one thing to remember with all of these shopping portal bonus type offers is there's a great website that aggregates all the information by merchant. So you can basically say, oh, okay, I want to buy something from Kohl's, which is a sort of like a department store. And if you know you want to buy from Kohl's, you can go to this website, Every Reward, which is just EV and then the word reward.com. And they aggregate all of the different offers, Delta's shopping portal, Americans, United's, Ebates, all the different ones that are out there. And they tell you what the best deal is for the merchant that you actually want to buy stuff at. So that's what I do to just double check. One really quick opportunity, Aeroplan is giving away 150 free miles. You're definitely not flying anywhere with 150 miles, but they do have points that expire. Aeroplan miles, I think, expire after 18 months. And so if you don't have Amex points to transfer in, or you just, are worried about those points expiring, this could be really good. Basically, you just need to, I think, essentially confirm your travel goals. So they want you to share your travel plans, and you just have to share some plans with them. And that's going to win you an extra 150 Aeroplan miles, which will reset the expiration date. So that could be a good deal to something that just takes about 30 seconds to take care of. Let's see here. We've got another bonus on life miles. Big surprise, happens all the time. This one is 125% bonus. Probably not an awesome deal for most people, but if you have some interest in acquiring life miles, or you're looking at booking premium cabin tickets on Star Alliance, this is one to take a look at. Just sample information. If you're flying US to Europe in business class, you could potentially buy miles and get a business class one way for about $865. If you're flying first class, you're looking at like $1,200 ballpark. That could include Lufthansa. So there's some interesting options. Southeast Asia business class costs 78,000 miles, so that would come out to about $1,073. North Asian first class, which is like Japan, Korea, that would cost 90,000 miles, which is about $1,200. So bottom line, if you've got flights that you want to take and there's business or first class availability, and otherwise, you might consider buying a ticket, take a look, because the one ways, are roughly around $1,000, maybe a little more, a little less. So buying life miles could make sense. If you would otherwise potentially buy a business class fare that could be $3,000 or $4,000, there's definitely an opportunity to save some money. Other news involving Avianca Life Miles is that they have released their 60,000 point credit card bonus. So that one is out now, and boy, I got to take a look and see what the promo code is. I think when you go to the website, you have to enter some sort of promo code to get the 60,000 point bonus. Let me see if I can dig this guy up. Yeah, so it looks like the promo code is AVSPWE. And so this is 60,000 life miles after your first purchase. So it could be a thing that you want to combine with buying some extra life miles if you need 70,000 or 80,000. That might actually make those that buy points offer a better deal. Do keep in mind that the $149 annual fee for this card is not waived for the first year. So you are going to pay $149 to get those miles. And this card does count against the Chase 524 rule. So if you're already over 524, no big deal. Go for it. The card is issued by, who's the issuer here? Banco Popular. Interesting. Okay, so not one of the standard U.S. bank operations, which means you don't have to worry about using an application that, if another good offer comes out from Chase or Citi or whatever, you may be able to do that. But this one will count against 524. So if you open this account, just know that that's one card that counts towards the total number you've opened in the last 2 years that may prevent you from opening up new Chase products. All right, that's actually a good transition. One point to make about Chase that is a little bit of a bummer is that the Inc. Business Preferred Card, which Chase released just recently, is not available for product change. And so this applies for people who are over the 524 rule, meaning that you can't get new cards from Chase. And so the reserve card, the business preferred card, if you are eligible, i.e. you have 4 or fewer new cards opened in the last 24 months has an 80,000 point bonus after you spend $5,000 in 90 days. So that's definitely a great offer if you're eligible. But a lot of people have been asking us about, hey, can I actually get this card if I already have too many recent applications? There are some nice benefits, especially the cell phone insurance policy. That's something that I was kind of interested in getting. And the bad news is that you can't convert a different card into that. So if you have the Ink Plus card or the Ink Cash card from Chase, those are two other small business cards, it looks like at least at this point, they are not allowing you to convert from one of those other products into this new card product. The only way you can get it is if you apply for it. And the only way you can apply for it is if you have fewer than 5 applications in the last 24 months. So bad news there. But on the other hand, these sorts of things tend to change a lot. So sit tight, and there might be an opportunity coming up in the future. Last but not least, we've got a JetBlue bonus for Amazon purchases. You need to go through the link. Same idea as these shopping portals. This is 3x points on JetBlue for every dollar spent on Amazon. And I'm actually talking to you guys right now with a microphone that I bought on Amazon and got some extra points on JetBlue. Not sure how long it's going to take me to actually use those because JetBlue points are not the most valuable. But again, if you're going to buy something anyways, why not get some extra points? Let's see here. I think we are almost to the end of the news and updates. AJ talked about Alitalia last month. And so same thing. The bonus is 40% transfer from Amex membership rewards, but be careful. Only use it if you know Alitalia well and you're looking to book Alitalia flights. Their SkyTeam Partner award chart really sucks. Next up, Buy American Miles for very cheap, says the points guy. I don't really agree. If you buy a huge number of miles, you can, in fact, buy American Miles for 1.74 cents per point, and that's going to be valid through January 3rd, so you got plenty of time. Good news, if you buy points from American, it gets processed by American rather than points.com, so you get an airfare bonus. If you use the Amex Platinum card, you could get 5x, or Chase Ultimate, Chase Reserve card, you could get 3x. That's good, but to get the maximum bonus, you need to buy 150,000 miles, which is going to run you like $5,000. So definitely not for everyone, and the bonuses suck if you buy less than 10. There's no bonus if you buy less than 10,000 miles, and the bonuses are pretty weak if you buy lower numbers of miles. So only good for people who are buying a ton of miles. Those tend to be folks, if you buy business and first class flights, take a look. Last but not least, 30% transfer bonus from Citi Thank You to Hilton. Not exciting to me, but it is valuable or available through February 8th. So typically the transfer ratio is 1 thank you point gets you 1.5 Hilton Honors points. And so now you can get 2 Hilton Honors points per thank you point. Not a terrible deal, but honestly, you can probably do almost as well just using your thank you points directly to book a hotel. This could be useful for super high cost Hilton properties. So Hiltons, that are in the higher categories that cost, $400, $500 a night, maybe. But thank you points are pretty valuable, so I probably wouldn't waste them on this. Let's see, any crazy news? Lufthansa pilots finally decided to stop striking. We think we'll see whether that actually carries through and they stop delaying flights around Europe. Hope you guys weren't affected by that. Super frustrating, but I guess maybe the company needs to be a little bit nicer to their pilots. We also have a story about a tourist that was denied entry to Kazakhstan because New Zealand isn't a country. Kind of an interesting post. I won't get into too much details, but apparently they thought it was part of Australia, and they detained her for 2 days because she didn't have an Australian passport. It seems like this is a joke, so I apologize if this turns out to be a hoax or something, but kind of interesting. And I think the moral here is just pay very close attention to visa stuff with countries that are, potentially subject to someone. I suppose this could happen anywhere, but, a country like Kazakhstan maybe doesn't have the best worldview in terms of the immigration officials knowing things about other countries. So, if you're going to a place that may have that type of bureaucracy, or somebody could really ruin your day, in this case, detained her for 48 hours, make sure you have a letter of invitation. And if there's a visa required, even if it's like a visa on arrival type situation, make sure you do your homework for those types of trips, because what a huge bummer to not be able to complete your trip and to get detained. That's pretty much it for today's show. Time to hop over to the interview. Really enjoyed talking to Eli David. He's the founder of a couple of pretty interesting travel-related and startup-related websites. We ended up talking quite a bit about kind of off the beaten path locations for entrepreneurs. So places like Bulgaria, Croatia, a couple of places in Israel, a couple of places in Greece and Romania. So if you're interested in kind of learning about some other options, some other ways to approach location independent travel, I think this was a really cool conversation, and Eli's an awesome guy. So I hope you guys enjoy. AJ and I will be back next week. And see you soon. All right, so today I am joined by Eli David. He's been a digital nomad since 2010, changing locations every couple of months. And he sustains a nomadic life as a founder of two startups, Startup Blink, which is a global startup ecosystem map, and LingoLearn, which is an online language school. And he's also the host of the Become Nomad podcast and blog, where he shares his knowledge about the nomadic lifestyle. Eli, thanks so much for joining me today.
Erik, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so we really haven't had a ton of focus on the digital nomad lifestyle and living in a location independent way. It's always something that's sort of been fundamental underlying AJ and my experience. But I'm super excited to talk with you about your experience and also just about the feedback that you've gotten, because the website is a very cool resource. Actually, both Startup Blink and Become Nomad have some really interesting information. So I'm super excited to talk with you about the nomad lifestyle a little bit.
Excellent. I'll be happy to share my information. I've been doing it for over 6 years now. So I think that I gathered a lot of experiences to kind of being able to go deep and analyze this lifestyle that I actually enjoy a lot. So.
Great, man. Well, let's start at the beginning. Can you give everybody kind of a quick intro about how you got to this position where you, I'll let you tell the story, but it seems like you had kind of an abrupt and sudden transition.
Yeah, it's kind of, the story is always funny, but, everyone kind of has the same story of feeling a little bit stuck in a point of life that they don't really enjoy. I guess that's the combined, let's say, reality of everyone that actually plunged into this lifestyle. Some people are doing something with it. Some people are continuing to suffer. And some of the people who are doing something with it are actually suffering even more and go back to the normal lifestyle. But in my case, I was an accountant. I was working in KPMG and BDO, big accounting companies. It couldn't be more boring. And basically, I have to tell you that, a lot of people are kind of proactively say, okay, I wanna go for a nomadic lifestyle or travel lifestyle. And in my case, it was a little bit different. Like I had a serious relationship and I had a serious job, and I kind of lost the both of them in the same month. So, when you lose your attachments, you're kind of rethinking life, and you're saying to yourself, okay, I kind of, lost the things that defined me and the most important things. But in the same time, you understand that it really increases the level of your freedom to actually do a change. And it was in the back of my mind. I have to tell you that during this period of working as an accountant and having this relationship, I was always planning to get to 60, 65, and then just get to the road. So I guess that kind of, some stuff happened, and I kind of told myself, hey, let's not wait until I'm 65. Let's try to build something right now. And yeah, that was 6 years ago. And since then, I'm going strong. I'm basically changing locations every 2 months, trying to go always to a new location. I lived in more than 30 countries. And by saying I lived, I mean I stayed over a month in a place. That's a period I need to actually say that I lived in a place.
Sure.
And it's been a fun ride so far.
You brought up a really important point that, that transition, making the choice to leave your job or leave some other things in your life behind to explore other opportunities is not a smooth process. And I think, from my conversations with lots of entrepreneurs, that's a really common recurring theme. What did you learn, because I think that, for me, still one of the biggest challenges is being able to settle down in other countries, foreign places, and be able to be productive. What did you learn about yourself while trying to establish a more nomadic lifestyle?
Yeah, you learn a lot all the time. I have to tell you, it's a never-ending process. I actually document it in a blog post, on Become Nomad, that I'm basically setting up the rules of how I have my daily routine and what is my frequency of travels and so on. And maybe that's the first thing that I learned, is that you can really get lost easily in the uncertainty and chaos, which is changing locations. Because when you change locations, your entire environment changes. Like you don't know anything about the location and the people with you. For me, it's a complete reset button because I'm traveling alone as well. So for me, everything changes. And I guess that this is one of the things that I learned, is that you cannot rethink every move in every new place. You kind of have to know your things. I have, Erik, a list of 30 things that, even more than 30, I have a checklist. And basically, whenever I arrive to a place, I'm basically going through the checklist and killing items there until I restart the checklist on a new place. And it's kind of fun. It feels a little bit like useless, You keep on, you're killing it. You're reaching to the end. You're happy, and then you go to a new place and it starts again. But that's the fun of it. Yeah. But I would go on a structure. If you are going for this lifestyle, you need a very specific structure. For example, my structure is the frequency of travel that used to be a lot more frequent. Now it's slower. I go for slow travel, because if you're changing locations, really fast, there is no way you're going to be effective. The second thing is co-working, which is kind of a must for me. I'm like, before I go to a place, I don't care about accommodation. I don't care about anything. The first thing I check is co-working. And that's one of the things that actually pushed me into doing Startup Link, which is, the global map of the startup ecosystem. I'm mapping also co-working spaces there. And it's for me, like I'm the first user there is. So
yeah, I think that's a super cool way to approach a problem, and I've noticed going through both of those websites that you've done an amazing job of blazing the trail for folks and making it easier to find the information that you need about co-working and about other things that are super important to be able to hit the ground running and not lose so much time when you do make a transition to a new setting.
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to make it as easy as possible. There is a lot of people also like, the story element of it and the fluff. And I kind of suck at that. I'm kind of, I like more the practical. Okay, tell me what to do. Give me the checklist and I'll go from there. But I guess that when you build something, even when you're on the road or in any situation, you want it to serve yourself. First of all, like you want to be kind of the first user. There has to be some kind of pain involved, and the initial pain, it's always your pain in a way. So I guess that's how I build the things that I do.
That makes a ton of sense. So I wanted to ask you about co-working specifically, because AJ and I actually, in a lot of places that we live, we end up working from home. And that's worked out very well in some cases, but it certainly has some drawbacks. What about having a co-working place or someplace to go and get your work done that's separate from where you're living has been important for you? And have you tried the other way? What are the challenges for you when you're working from home?
Yeah, when I work from home, I'm basically watching YouTube. That's basically what I do when I work from home. So I have to tell you that, it's not like I have recommendation for everyone. One of the things that I've learned also about the nomadic lifestyle, by the way, is that it's not, we're so different. All of us are so different that I can't tell co-working is good like 100%. For some people, it's not going to be good. Actually, for some people, it's going to be a big distraction.
Sure.
And it's kind of going to affect their effectiveness the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
For me, for the type of personality that I am, I'm kind of a copy-paste guy, like I don't see anyone around me, I'll go to YouTube. I see a lot of people working, and I'll tell myself, I got to work. Everyone's working. So I guess that it has to do a lot
peer
with
pressure.
Yeah, exactly. The psychology, the self-manipulation. I'm self-manipulating myself like half of the day, at least. Half of my day is doing self-manipulation on myself. So on co-working, there are so many advantages that, I'm like, for me, the concept is totally a lifesaver. I'll tell you one more thing is that, I'm switching locations all the time. Kind of, as I said, going on a reset button, clicking the reset button. And it means that you also reset socially. So for me, co-working is one of the things that I use to actually build a social life in the very short time that I have, in the sense of community and meeting new people, something that, of course, you can't do at home. So it has a lot of benefits for me. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I think that's certainly been one of the challenges for me as well. Is there's a certain degree of loneliness when you're traveling alone, and it can feel like some of the relationships are more superficial. That you don't really have a chance to go deep with folks. And what I've found personally is that I have been able to make a lot of friends that are folks that I come back to, that are friends that, maybe I only spend a few months in a place, but I do get to develop some cool relationships. And I personally really like to come back to other places that I've lived and worked. And, so this is my third time in Medellin. It's been, fun to explore other spots as well, but it can be really cool to be able to get back and see some of the people that are, still living in the place that you've spent time before.
I totally agree. And surprisingly, the fun thing is that sometimes you meet someone. For example, I met a friend in Bosnia about 4 years ago, and she came to visit me in Israel about 2 years ago. And the same happened in Croatia and so on and so on. So it's not always people are moving all the time. You might run into those people actually in different locations as well, which is pretty cool. And this is something that I learned, that when you have enough friends and you're doing it for long enough, you're going to run into the same people. The planet is not that big, especially if you go on the digital nomad hubs, you're very likely to already know people that you met in maybe even a different place. For me, on personal preference, I have to tell you that I prefer to go to a new place because there is this feeling of something new. For example, I was just in Minsk in Belarus, and the Lenin statues and everything is so different. Going to the same place is something that I enjoy, and I'm letting myself do a lot more recently. For example, I have my spots in Saloniki in Greece and Odessa in the Ukraine, two places that I really enjoy, and Zagreb in Croatia. But I prefer to go to new places, especially if I had a good experience in a place. Because if I had a good experience in a place, for example, in Buenos Aires, when I go back, it's always like, but where is the life that I used to have? It was so perfect back then. So if I have to go back, I would actually intuitively will go back to a place that I didn't like, because it's probably going to be better than the last time. And the place that I liked, I kind of like to keep in my memories and, try to always explore. But again, just like I mentioned before, everyone has their own style of traveling and doing this lifestyle. And for me, it keeps on changing and upgrading. And there is no one right way or right preferences. It keeps on changing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Buenos Aires. That's a place that I have that golden image, and it's been about 6 or 8 years, maybe even now, since I was last there. And I'm excited to go back, but I'm also a little bit tentative just because of that. It was so very exciting and cool the first time. It'll be interesting. I'm sure I will be making it back at some point, but I can certainly see that challenge of places maybe not quite measuring up. I wanted to ask you about some of your favorite places, and I'd like to maybe explore some destinations that aren't on the well-beaten path for digital nomads. I mean, tons of folks are in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, in Bangkok. There's I guess sort of it feels like there's sort of a circuit of places that are really common, and you've explored a lot of places that are off the track. Can you give our listeners some maybe a list of top 5 or something that you found really enjoyable that might not be talked about very often?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess a word of warning in advance is that the hubs, we're always trying to find something new and exciting and, kind of a hidden gem. I have to say that the hubs have their very big advantage of being able to connect to like-minded people. For example, I was in Chisinau last year in Moldova, the capital of Moldova. There was no digital nomad, even close by. I guess in Moldova, like there is no one there, like it was only me. And I have to tell you, the hubs are cool because you can really connect to people who have the same lifestyle like you. So a word of warning, if you are venturing into or settling down in a place which is not really hub, you're probably going to have to focus a lot more in locals and a lot less in tourist or / digital nomads. And that's a different skill or there are different methods of doing that. But for me, it works out great. Some places that I enjoyed were, for example, Sofia and Varna in Bulgaria. I really like Bulgaria, by the way, because it's like a very low-cost country. It allows you to run away from the EU. EU, yes. You can only stay on Schengen visa 3 months, so you need those spots where you run away.
Yes.
You probably have your stories as well on running away from Europe. So, yeah, I totally adore Croatia. I think Croatia is one of my top favorites, especially Split. A city where you can go co-working and then in the middle of the day you go for a swim in the Adriatic Sea and go back to co-working. I like those places where I can go back to a swim in the middle of the day. That's like a cool place. The place where I am now, actually, I'm back home to a family vacation, and I'm in a city called Haifa in Israel. And that's actually also a great place where you can take a swim, go co-working. It's not that expensive as Tel Aviv, and you also enjoy the startup ecosystem that Israel has. And if you're into startups, Israel has a lot to offer as to, trying to promote your startup, meeting really talented people, investors, and so on and so on. Bogota. I'm actually a big fan of Bogota, and we talked about this before that I'm not so much into Medellin. I don't know why, but Bogota always caught my mind. And I guess that's basically a few locations that I really enjoy. Saloniki in Greece, beautiful. Brasov in Romania, in Transylvania. The mountains are amazing. Cost of living is very, very cheap. So, but Minsk now, I've been more into the old Soviet Union in the last year, and Minsk is a beautiful city. Krakow, by the way, in Poland, I anticipate Krakow to become a hub very soon because it's a beautiful city, and I think it's going to join the club of Budapest, Berlin, and Barcelona on the top. So many locations,
Very cool. Well, tell me a little bit about some of the resources that people can find if they want to explore some of these destinations where you've done a little bit of advanced scouting. How does the process work? So, tell me, I guess, first about how you do your research, and then maybe just a quick run through of how folks can take advantage of what you've already found and access some information without having to be on the ground before they know what the game plan is.
I guess the best way is actually to speak with people and kind of figure out what did people enjoy the most. I just finished a very long article on digital nomad locations on Become Nomad. If you go there, you're going to have digital nomad locations. It's a really long article with about, I think, 40 locations that I enjoyed. And the idea is to also, I think that before you're interested in which locations you want to meet, the first step is basically to know yourself a little bit. What makes you happy? You have to figure out if you're in a phase that you want to be by the sea. or if you're in a phase that you actually want to do walks by the mountains, or you're in a phase that you're actually raising capital for your startup and you need a startup hub to actually grow your startup and connect to clients. So, every one of us, if you're in a phase, for example, of low cost, and then you can pick the Ukraine or Chiang Mai or locations that were hit, by the way, by depreciation. One of the things that I like checking, by the way, is for value is currency fluctuations. For example, the hryvnia, the Ukrainian currency, got slashed. It's now 30% of what it used to be 2 years ago, and that makes life incredibly cheap. So there are lots of currency fluctuations that really change the cost of living and the value that you receive. And I think those are all things that you have to take into account. But then again, it's also, there are no good locations or bad locations. There are good locations for you, depending on what you're looking for. So I kind of figured out that every place is interesting. Like, you can really not go wrong with any place. As long as you know who you are and you know what you're looking for, you're kind of going to be okay. But definitely, you have to ask yourself also, do I care about having a social life with like-minded people and then you want to go for a hub, or am I more of an introvert and I can be a little bit alone and actually explore local life that in a place that is not touristic, and then maybe you want to even try Tbilisi or Yerevan in Armenia. So you have a lot of options, and I don't think you can go wrong. You just have to go somewhere, and you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Oh, I think you bring up a really good point about some places being good for some types of people. And also, in my experience, some places it's also just as much about the stage that you're at in your life and in business, where, AJ and I are generally very social and, like meeting other entrepreneurs and going out and connecting with people. And, we did a little bit more of that in Barcelona. But as we got towards the end of it, part of the reason we picked Medellin was just that we knew we had a couple of really close connections that could sort of serve as support mechanisms and masterminds and stuff like that here in Medellin, but that we wouldn't be so distracted by some of the other social stuff, and we could just really put our heads down and get some work done. So I think that's one of the other huge advantages for me in terms of being able to pick a place, is knowing, okay, this is a spot where I can network. This is a place where I can, potentially find other people that there's opportunities to collaborate with and grow my business that way. And this is a place where I can just not be bothered, put my head down, and just get a ton of work done.
Oh, sounds pretty cool. One more thing that you actually reminded me is also the language thing, that basically if you're interested in language, let's say you want to learn Spanish, Medellin is going to be an amazing city for that. One of the reasons why I focused more time in the former Soviet Union is because I want to learn Russian. So it also depends exactly what you said. It's on what are you aiming for, your goals and so on. But yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I have, the resources that you've put together are really helpful and super cool. And I expect that folks that are either just getting started and trying to chart their course, or I imagine we have a lot of people that are kind of on the other side and haven't quite made that leap and are considering making a big change and embracing digital nomadism for a while. So I hope that folks can find you. The website is becomenomad.com, and also Startup Blink and Lingo Learn. We're going to have all the links from this conversation in our show notes. Thanks so much, Eli.
Thanks, Erik. Thanks for inviting me, and keep up the good work. We'll be in touch.
Cheers, man. Thanks so much for being with us once again.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you.